love learning so home. You get the education for all. Gyanwani, Gyanwani, education at your doorstep.
I am Professor Vibhuti Patel, Head of the Department of Economics in Mumbai from SNDT Women's University. Dear students, lesson number 4 is about women and work, concept of women and work, women in the labor market, segmentation in the labor market, and overall work participation of women in different sectors of the economy. Now this lesson throws light on concept and analysis of women's paid and unpaid work, valuation of productive and unproductive work of women, what do we mean by visible work and invisible work of women, what is economically productive work and what is socially productive work, what is economic status, private property and participation of women in the pre-industrial society and after industrial revolution and also in the current industrial societies. How do women contribute to national income both by contributing in terms of unpaid work through care economy, cooking, cleaning, caring, bringing water, looking after livestock for which they are not paid. But had this work been not done by women, you would have to purchase all these services. So that work and through their wage work, how do women contribute to the national income? Now objective of this lesson is to analyze women's housework and value attached to it. Explain methods of valuing women's work, which are the concepts and how do we compute, how do we estimate, how do we calculate women's contribution to the economy. Establish relationship between economically productive and socially productive work. Highlight participation of women in pre-industrial society and now industrial societies, and discuss contribution of women in enhancing national income, GDP. Before we start our discussion on women and work, let us read a poem by Amrita Pritam. Originally written as a big poetry depicting life of women from pre-birth to the death. It is called From Darkness of Womb to the Silence of Grave, written in Punjabi and Hindi. Its translation goes like this. I am just taking 2 verses related to women and work. Housewife. If a woman's husband is asked, what does his wife do? The answer is, my wife doesn't work. Then, who bears this world in her womb? Who gives birth to the farmers and the workers? Who cooks, washes, cleans and fills water? Looks after child and the sick? Whose labor gives man leisure for liquor, tobacco and card sessions? Whose labor gives man the strength to go to work? Who labors without being noticed, mutely working, without being paid, without being appreciated ever? Means that most of the women whose work they do, there were no age at retirement, they are working continuously, there are no weekly holidays for her, there is no bonus, no provident fund, no other benefits that these women get. Now this same poem, if we put it in a statistical terms, I would like to start with United Nations Statistical Wing has computed women's contribution to the economy by compilation of reports of 190 countries. And what it came out with? UN says women constitute 1/2 of world's population. Women do 2/3 of women's world's work. What they get in return is 1/10 of world's income, and women control 1% of world's wealth. Now coming to India, the latest 2011 census says that 26% of Indian women are in the workforce. They are and out of which nearly 94% women are in the unorganized sector and 6% women are in the organized sector. Women all around the world have been doing paid, underpaid and largely unpaid work. I am using the term underpaid to signify that most of the women are not getting equal wages for doing similar work. Now they work in factories, fields, forests, mines, homes, kitchen gardens, fields, over and above 3 C's. 3 C's are cooking, cleaning, caring. Number of activities that women do. For cooking, cleaning, caring, suppose as economists we don't consider this work as a contribution to national income. You call it personal work, okay? To start, let us now presume the activities that women do, such as collection of fuel, fodder, water, animal husbandry, kitchen gardening, raising poultry, that augment family resources. Had women been not doing this work, you would have to purchase all these items, water, fuel, fodder, vegetables, fruits, eggs, everything you would have to purchase from the market. If women would not do this work, the goods would have been. Then you will need money to buy these goods. Our census defines work as an activity done by a person that brings remuneration, income, salary, wages, payment. All able-bodied persons in the age group of 15 to 59 are part of the labor force according to Indian census. Those who are employed for 183 days in a year are declared as a main workers. Those who get paid for 4 hours a day continuously for 186 days are considered to be marginal workers, and the rest of the workforce is classified as a non-worker or outside the workforce. Now, valuation of productive and unproductive work of women has been a debate going on for past 50 years. The debate is about economic and social function of housework and its relation to women's operation. It's an old one, has been feature of both the first and second wave of women's movement in the US, Britain and Europe. Both in 19th century and in the 20th century, the underlying issue is how to handle public and private split with the capitalist society in which women's reproductive function have been limited into their home and created a second shift problem. First shift is you cooking, cleaning, caring, and the second shift is to go to office, to go to factory and do the paid work. So it is unpaid work of women which provides continuous supply of labor power to the economy, because the economy can't function without active workforce. In the first wave, look at it as it was in the Victorian period, where the dominant ideology of middle and upper class women was purity, piety and domesticity, also called as a cult for true womanhood. The debate centered on whether to see housework in a private sphere, yet make it more scientific and efficient, whether to socialize it by bringing it into the public realm. If women are working in factories during the World War, we saw all men were busy killing each other at the frontier in Europe, okay? And women were doing every work. They were engine drivers, they were pilots, they were in shops, they were in factories, they were in mines, they were underground, they were in submarine. A whole economy of the nation in Europe during First and Second World War was managed by women. Their dress code changed. The Victorian robe, which women were wearing, that long, big maxi-like stuff, that went away, and instead jeans were invented, and with several pockets, so that this woman who had a baby tucked in front or at the back while working in the farm, she had a sandwich in one pocket, baby's milk bottle in the other pocket, third bottle had baby's nappy, fourth pocket would have her tools. So that image of women working in each and every sphere of the economy was created, and that was the time the new term of socialization of function of family. That means instead of asking an individual woman to do the cooking, why can't we have a community kitchen? Instead of individual mother looking after the baby, why can't we have a daycare center for children? So socializing this function, and some countries experimented also. We know Israel or in Russia, in so many places, countries, they tried to do the socialization of function of family. In the US, the public housekeeping aspect of progressive movement of 1890s and the early 1900s advocated that women bring the positive value associated with motherhood into the public sphere by obtaining the vote, cleaning out corruption in politics, creating settler houses to educate and support immigrants, forming women's peace movement, etc. Disagreement about whether to downplay or valorize the distinct function and skills in motherhood as work for which women are naturally superior, and the motherhood as restricting women's chances for economic independence and equality with man in public sphere. It continued nearly for last 1 century. This debate has been going on. Now, as Amrita Pritam's poem in the beginning of this lesson showed, that though women do variety of work, it remains invisible. And the same thing, it doesn't remain only in mind of you and me. Even when the data is collected, the enumerator of census would go to in front of him, he would be seeing, say if he goes to Dharavi, Okay, he goes to potter's community. He would see this potter woman bringing grass, baking pots, coloring their pots, and still that enumerator would write in a census form. For a woman, he would write non-working, and for man, they would write he is a potter. So this bias remains in each and every area. Now, from 1991 onwards, Census of India is giving a visual poster. ये सब भी काम है. All this is work, and they show women doing different types of work, so that enumerator knows that if you see a woman milking a cow, you have to write her as a worker. If she is working, helping in the agrarian operations, you have to write the worker. The whole earlier approach of census or even data gathering agency, which sees only people who are bringing cash in hand, who get wages or salary or remuneration, only treating them as workers, has created this bias that all those who do unpaid work, like in most of the joint family or most of the household sector, you go to city of Surat, in every household in the walled city, economic activities are going on. How do you get all these cheap Surat saris for 160 rupees? How are you getting all those dresses from Surat at such a low cost? Because the whole family labor system is there. The head of the household is declared as a worker in a census data, but the rest of the family members who are unpaid family workers. So whole category of unpaid family workers, whether they are in the family of a potter or a blacksmith or a carpenter or an agriculturist or artisan or person in cottage industry, weaver, in all these families, even when each and every member of the family is working, only head of the household is declared as worker. So this work of women, that I'm not talking of housework, not talking about cooking, cleaning, caring, I'm talking about helping in economically productive work. So women's, it is called household work. Wherever household is a unit of production and every member is contributing according to their age and gender, women's household work remains invisible as it is performed inside four walls of their house, and their work is not even recognized as work, and it is not remunerated. They don't get money for it. Invisibility of women's household work is an outcome of definition of work in economics that defines work as any type of physical or mental activity undertaken in anticipation of economic returns. Now, this particular undertaken in anticipation of economic returns creates a problem. Women's household work remains invisible as it is ignored in estimating national income. National income is defined as sum total of all production. We have three methods of, as you know, students of economics, there are three methods of computing national income. You have a income method, you have expenditure method, and you have a production method. Production is defined as creation of utility. The utility can be form utility. You are producing something, say from raw material to finished good. Place utility. You have a rent, for anything like land prices are so high, they are going up. So it's a place utility. You have a time utility. When you are working overtime, you get more money. And you have a service utility. What kind of services, how your services is rated in the economy. How come a person with IT background would draw 10 to 15 times more salary than a person working in the community doing equally useful essential service but not getting that much salary. So we have four types of these utilities. Women are continuously producing one of these four utilities. Either they are producing from atta, they are making chapati, roti, they are making bread. From vegetable, they are making finished product. They have a place utility also because they work from home. Then also it is useful because they are doing care work. And if they are working in the office, they are also doing this. There too, they don't get equal wages. They don't get same level of promotion. The time utility, women's time, first time now we are talking about opportunity cost of a woman. If I have done PhD in economics, and if my parents are very ill, and I have to look after them and give up my job, what is the opportunity cost for me? My opportunity, giving up a job of a professor and looking after my parents for free, because for that work is not paid. So now the value of women's work has been now a matter of concern for the nation states, for the policymakers and for governments, and the service utility is very important. Now, in spite of producing all these types of utilities, women's contribution is not netted. It is not computed in the national income. Production by women in the household has use value. That's what the economists say. Use value is important. It is essential. but it doesn't produce profit. It doesn't have exchange value as it is not traded in the market, because you cooking for your family is not tradable thing. You are cooking for the loved ones, your family members. Women's production in the household is ignored as it has no price tag attached to it. That's why the women's work also remains unrecognized, unrewarded, and invisible. Coming to this whole terminologies of economically productive and socially productive work. The second wave of the women's movement, the theories that came out were about housework, whether housework oppresses women. Liberal feminist critique of housework was because they said it is unpaid. This makes women dependent on men. It devalues their labor since their work is outside the meaningful sphere of public economic production. It also creates a perception that women are burdened. The whole argument of dowry. How do economists see dowry? Dowry is equal to, means groom is equal to dowry plus bride. Okay, so there is inequality. Groom is not equal to bride. Bride has to be supplemented with dowry to become for the marriage. So this kind of dependency is created. Marxist feminist theories see this as a part of the problem, but some go further to maintain that housework is a part of a household feudal mode of production of goods for use that persists under capitalism and gives man feudal power on women's work. So every man is a king in his house because he has a slave who will work for her. This is the argument given. The housework is a necessary work for reproducing the working class. It's unpaid. That means women are subsidizing the capitalists by giving them labor power, healthy labor power for the economy. It is the sexual division of labor in productive and reproductive work that makes women unequal to men and allows capitalists to exploit women's unpaid labor. Some even make this analysis the basis for demand for wages for housework. There was a strong campaign in the 60s and 70s where women from Europe, Scandinavian, Nordic countries, they demanded wages for housework, and Iceland was one country where there was 100% successful strike. It was a small island country where 100% of women had gone on a strike for a couple of days, including Prime Minister's wife had also been on strike demanding wages for housework. More recently, we have seen that the analysis of transition to capitalism in Europe, in that it is argued that it was emerging capitalist class that needs to control the working class reproduction and to eliminate working class women's control over biological reproduction and to assure their unpaid reproductive work in the home by restricting abortions, because economy, like all pronatalist economy, all the economies with shortage of labor power, they follow pronatalist policies. So they withdraw facility for abortion because the women have to perform this patriotic duty of producing a number of children. One of the philosophical problems raised by housework debate is how to draw the line between work and play or leisure activity when activity is not paid. Is a mother playing with her baby, should we consider her working or engaged in play? If the former, then her hours in such activity may be compared with those of her husband or a partner to see if there is exploitation relation present. For example, if his total hours of productive and reproductive work for the family are less than hers. But to the extent child rearing counts as leisure activity, as play, as activity held to be intrinsically valuable, no exploitation is involved. Perhaps child rearing and other caring activity is both work and play, but only that portion which is necessary for psychological growth of child and workers count as work. If so, who determines when the line is crossed? Since non-market activity doesn't have a clear criterion to distinguish work from non-work, from non-necessary social labor, an arbitrary element seems to creep in that makes standards of fairness difficult to apply to gendered household bargain between men and women, dividing up wages, waged and non-waged work. Now, Indian gender economists, they have come up with a formula which says that we should divide women's work into three categories. One is a personal work that you can't do without That means watching TV. No one else can watch TV for you. Bathing, doing daily eating, that is a personal work. Second category is that of a care work, looking after family members or community or guests or children or ill members in the unwell members, physically unwell members in the family, elderly parents is a care work. And third category is that of a wage work. So personal work, care work and wage work, this is how we should understand women's work. Now coming to the relationship between economic status of women, private property and participation of women in the economy in the pre-industrial and industrial society, what we have seen that both the changing historical relations between human work and nature and the relationship of human beings to each other in the production and distribution of goods to meet the material needs that construct human nature differently in different historical period. In the nomadic humans, the difference was the way private property or the division of work operated was very different from that in the feudal society or in the capitalism. Thank you very much.